Hey there, it's Bogdan, and I'm so excited to be here with Tom Broadwell. Tom Broadwell is an incredible expert in the field of health and fitness. He's been in this industry for more than 19 years. And here in this interview, I want him to kind of talk about for people that are on both sides of the scale, whether you're watching this and you're someone who, for example, maybe your body is breaking down, you're starting to see some symptoms, or something's going on in your body that you want to resolve and you want to reverse and so on. Or whether you're someone who's young, you're already feeling great, but you want to be able to, for example, build muscle. You want to have more energy during the day. How do you go and take wherever you are at and improve your health and your fitness? That's why I brought in Tom here to talk about this. He's been in this industry for, again, more than 19 years. And so I'm so excited to bring you here. He'll share about his story as we go along here. Welcome, Tom. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Bogdan. Thank you.
So how did you get started with this industry, and what led you to the work that you do today?
Um, well, as a young man, it's actually quite a funny story. I used to be a big fan of wrestling, the American style wrestling. And so, the big muscular physiques, it's something I always aspired to be as a teenager. So I started going to the gym at a fairly young age. And then one thing led to another. Eventually, I thought, okay, I'd like to work in a gym and be a personal trainer. So I went and got my qualifications, and that's where it all started, basically.
Perfect. And then beyond that point, so I know that your real kind of, you say and you talk about in your book, which we'll cover as well, that your real education started about 12 years ago. So what happened then, and how did you really get into the holistic side of health?
Um, yeah, so around maybe 14 years ago, I developed such bad eczema. I had a little bit of eczema as a child, a little bit in the crease of my elbow behind my knee. But it became overwhelming. My entire face, my entire body was open wounds. Every morning I'd wake up, I'd have to change my bed sheets because they were covered in blood and pus. It was a very, very painful situation to be in. And that's where, a lot of people will say, oh, you don't know how I feel because, I'm living in dis-ease. But I've been there to the point where at some points I was thinking, oh, I'd rather be dead than living like this. And I was in a vicious circle. My formal education as a personal trainer, basically your nutrition is very standard. Eat carbs, eat some protein, some fruits and vegetables. Eating grains, things like that. So I was eating bread and rice and pasta. And at the end of the day, I was trying to put a lot of muscle on. So everything I read beyond what I got taught in college was the same thing. I eat lots and lots of food, build muscle. So I'm sure I wasn't doing my digestive system any good. And then basically I was going to the doctor. His recommendation was, here's a steroid cream, here's a steroid tablet. It'd work for a little while, clear up my skin. But the side effects was it was drying my body out from the inside out. So at night, when I'm not in control of what I'm doing, I was scratching, waking up, covered in blood again. So I was in a vicious circle. And it's just a very normal thing. You don't learn anything at school or even in my education as a personal trainer to know any different. And then one day, one of my older clients, she called Ida from Spain. She gave me a book all about holistic healing. And I read it and I was like, wow, I literally know nothing about what it is to be healthy, even though I've gone through years of training in exercise and in nutrition. And it just opened my eyes up to a whole new world. And I love reading. So I basically devoured every book I could find on. It started a bit of holistic healing, then it went into detox, and then it went into just different forms of nutrition, alkalinity, and I just kept devouring the books and the knowledge and basically following the protocol. I healed my skin in about 6 months. I'm not going to say I've cured myself because if, for example, I spend time at my friend's house in London, he's got a cat, I'm allergic to cats, my eczema gets a little bit out of control. just a little bit on my neck or whatever, but never to the point of open wounds, pain, and thoughts of, I hate this. Like it's fine. It's something I can deal with.
And so since then, you've gone on and now you've conducted health seminars and all around the world, basically, many different countries, continents, worked on cruise ships, worked with people in person, online, around the world, and so on. And so if you as a personal trainer, having been a personal trainer for many years, you still didn't have, for example, basic education on how to, for example, reverse something like eczema or reverse some other disease or some other condition that someone else is facing and so on. Most people probably don't have this education. In fact, a lot of the time they probably have the wrong education. And so what would you say are some of the biggest myths, misconceptions, things that people believe are true, but you have found that they are actually ineffective when it comes to modern health, fitness, pharmaceutical industry, and so on?
The first thing, hopefully it's been eradicated from all nutrition education by now, but what I was learning was about the food pyramid, which is absolutely insane when you look at it. So at the bottom of the food pyramid, it tells you to eat something like 13, you can have 13 pieces of bread a day and you're still within nutritional guidelines. I mean, it's just insane. And then at the middle is vegetables, when really, if anyone knows anything about nutrition, absolutely, I teach in my book, gluten is incredibly toxic on the digestive system in the body, so it should be eradicated. But I also teach life's about balance. If you want a piece of bread or a sandwich, that's fine. Have it, be happy, move on. But it shouldn't be the base of a pyramid. Then the next thing, a massive misconception, is you need a ton of protein to build muscle. You don't. And protein, especially animal proteins, they break down in the body and they become incredibly toxic on the body. And this is where we see, the rising rates in cancer constantly. And a lot of that's to do with protein. And, when I was an aspiring bodybuilder or an aspiring American wrestler, I was eating tons of grains, tons of protein. And I'm pretty sure that will have led into a flare-up. Skin conditions are basically a window to what's happening internally. And my digestive system, I could tell you, was all over the place. I'm sure that had a lot to do with what I was doing there, because I was eating around 10 meals a day to try and build muscle, which is not good for anybody. So you don't need a ton of protein. They actually break down and be acidic in the body. And acid basically leads to inflammation. And inflammation, most people know, leads back to around 95%, if not 100% of diseases. And so we actually need to lower the carb intake, but not to the point where it's stressing you out, and lower the protein and increase our vegetables and get the antioxidants, the vitamins in there from these healthy foods.
Okay, perfect. And then besides what people should be eating in the book, so we'll talk about this book later on, but in your book, Lazy Bucks Don't Live to 100, the no bullshit guide to achieving optimal health, living longer, looking better naked. In this book, you also talk about some of the other myths being, for example, about genetics and that general conception there. So could you expand a little bit on that, how it holds people back and what people can do to shift that, so they can create better health for themselves?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is, and it's a thought that really is killing people around the world, and that's, trust me, I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor, and I'd never, say that I was one. But when you go to your doctor, you'll go in your mid-40s or your 50s, and they'll say, oh, your blood pressure's a bit high or your cholesterol's a bit high. It runs in your family. Mm-hmm. What does that do to your power? It completely takes it away. So they'll recommend you a pill, and now you can't change it because it's genetic. It runs in your family. Now, I'm not saying doctors are bad people by any stretch of the imagination, but, when I found out all about, when I was reading about holistic, health, I realized that when I went to my doctor, he didn't sit down and say, look, you should be cutting down on wheat, you should be cutting down on dairy, you should be cutting down on sugar. This is causing inflammation, and that's what's causing your eczema. They didn't say anything. They just gave me a pill or a cream. And I didn't realize that, because from the very, from being young, what do? You go to the doctor when you're sick and they give you something and then you feel better. And there's this whole trust thing. But it's not that they're a bad person. They just learn literally nothing about nutrition and nothing of what health really is. So if you want to learn about health, you actually have to go and self-educate. Now, when
So
you're
if
looking at genes, genes have very, very, very little to do with your health. Around somewhere between 90 to 99% of disease is caused by lifestyle. Yes, your genes can mean that you've got a weaker area of your body, or you're more likely to get a disease than the next person, but it doesn't mean you have to get that disease. And when a doctor says to you it runs in your family, if you look at your family's history, you've probably got the same lifestyle as your family. That's why it's running in your family. If you actually step away from what your family's typical lifestyle is and start cutting down on meat, cutting down on dairy, cutting down on carbs, or I should say starches and grains, things that we were never designed to eat. We were not designed to eat bread and pasta and cereal. That's just been around for a few hundred years. So if you step away from that, all of a sudden you'll see your life and your health changing.
Perfect. So just one big shift for people so they can move away and just start to realize that it's the lifestyle rather than, for example, the genetics. You also talk about, so in the book, you talk about a great perfect kind of example and case study of this, which is centenarians, people that live to more than 100 around the world. Could you share that kind of example?
Yeah, so there's little pockets of people all around the world that regularly live to 100 compared to the rest of the population of the world. Okinawa in Japan is one of these places. Now, an interesting observation, very simple. In Japan, in Okinawa, these people live the longest. But it's nothing to do with genetics, because as soon as they move to places like America and Brazil and they adopt the local lifestyle, very, very quickly, their life expectancy falls exactly in line with the local population, as do the rates of disease. In Okinawa in Japan, people are far less likely to have a heart attack, get heart disease, and get cancer. And when they do, their recovery rate is far higher. But there they are active, they're healthy into the 80s, the 90s, and and beyond.
Perfect. And so also in the book, you also cover kind of if people are going to, if lifestyle is what creates our health rather than our genetics, and we have control over this, like what should people do? What does lifestyle mean? And it's not just diet, but you talk about in the book, there are so many different areas of it. Just going from basically the table of contents here, like you talk about mindset, you talk about stress. There's a chapter on sleep. There's a chapter on water, of course, food, physical exercise, doctors and pharmaceuticals, nature and alternative therapies, the liver and negativity, the media. There's such a holistic approach here. So tell me why the holistic approach and how people can approach their health and fitness kind of holistically and look at all of these areas of their life and really use that to be able to transform their health and their fitness.
Yeah. Well, what led me to write the book was, two of my favorite books all about health. And one was by a very controversial figure who's now in jail. We can talk about why he's in jail and maybe another interview. But Kevin Trudeau, he wrote the book Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About. And he really took it to the pharmaceutical industry and really blew open the corruption within. They do say the root to evil is the root to all evil is money. And pharmaceutical industry has the highest profits of any industry in the world. So there is something to take from that. And then one of my other favorite books is The 100-Year Lie by Randall Fitzgerald. Now, the Randall Fitzgerald one is full of dates and figures and numbers, and it's a tough read. And then Kevin Trudeau is very controversial, much easier to read. But I realized that both of them were probably not going to draw in your average person. So I thought, can I write a book that sort of combines the two. It's full of scientific data. I referenced almost 400 scientific studies and government reports, and it's all backed by science, with some humor, and just make it much easier for the average person to read. And what made me do the holistic approach is health is not, you can eat healthy and you can exercise, but that's just scratching the surface. True health, you need to look at every angle, but I'm trying to make the book every angle from a very easy to implement, like step-by-step guide, if you like. So at the end of each chapter, I talk about action steps that are very easy to implement into your life. And I wrote the book like a house, if you like. So the foundations of the health house are food, water, stress, sleep. These are exercise. These are basic things that everybody knows that they need to look at for their health. And then as we go into the book, I call it more foo-foo, but I go into like, okay, what is spending time in nature? How can that affect your health? And there's thousands of studies when you look at it. There's an entire book referencing hundreds of studies just about hugging trees. And that sounds very hippie, but when you look at the science, you're like, oh, wow, trees are truly magical. And, they're rooted deep in our earth. And it's getting back to nature is basically what the book's about. But I start with the foundations, with things that everyone can agree with me on. But taking slightly different angles, and then I just go deeper and deeper and deeper into it, and throwing things at people. If I did it now, you'd call me crazy, but by the end of the book, I'm hoping that most people would be fully accepting of my message.
Makes sense. Okay, and so one of the foundational ones you talk about in one of the first few chapters is stress, and also kind of sleep as well. So what are some tips for anyone, like right now in the world, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of chaos? Like, what are some ways that people can, for example, reduce stress now and in the future, now and 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What are some of the habits, different ways to think that people can reduce stress and sleep better? What would be your biggest tips and advice?
I like to reference when we're talking about stress. I mean, the average person's day to day it's the day-to-day stress that's killing people, and stress links back to almost every disease. And so when in my seminars, I'll talk rapidly about the average person's day, but the very first second of your day, people get the crap scared out of them by an alarm. So straight away, your adrenaline, your cortisol's through the roof because an alarm shocks you awake. So one of the easiest things to implement is to get a sunrise alarm clock. So it's not alarming at all. So if you're someone who's waking up before the sun rises, this basically is the sun in your bedroom. It gently wakes you up. There's no alarms, no sounds. So it gently wakes up without the stress and the adrenaline going through the roof. So A, you're going to wake up more refreshed, and B, you're not going to have that first second of your day stress straight away. So that's a very simple thing. And then before bed, something that can lower stress and help you sleep better is writing 4 lists. Mm-hmm. The 4 lists, number 1, your to-do list for the next day. So that's going to reduce stress throughout your day because you've got a list, so you can be more responsive rather than reactive. And then also the second list is anyone you need to contact. So if you've not rung your mother in a while, or you need to email a business proposal or what have you, write down what you need to do and who you need to contact. And then if you're doing that before you sleep, it gets out of your brain. So you're not trying to sleep, thinking about what you need to do the next day. And then the other 2 lists, number 1 is, I call it your pissed off list. Anything that annoyed you that day, no matter how big or how small, write it down. Now, the pissed off list, you need to do it on a separate piece of paper. Write everything down so you're not thinking about it. You don't wake up in the night thinking about it. Screw it up and throw it in the dustbin. Mm-hmm. So that's now got rid of it on an energetic level. When I talk a lot about energy in the book, but some people will maybe need to be warmed up to that. And then your fourth list is a gratitude list. And I do this in a separate journal. And I write down 20 things that I'm grateful for. And if you're struggling right now to think of anything, start with, if you can see, start with, thank you for being able to see. Thank you for my good health. Thank you for my partner. And then from there, it just starts to roll. And you need to do it in that order. So the fourth list, you go to sleep with a big smile on your face. And if you keep that in a separate journal, anytime you're feeling down, you can open up your gratitude journal and remember why it's fantastic to be alive.
Perfect. Okay, and you cover all of this stuff in this book. And so what will people get out of reading this book? So let's say someone's watching this interview and they've already gotten a copy of this book, or they go and order it. What will people get out of this in terms of their mindset and in terms of actionable steps that they can use? And what will be some of the end results that can come from this, expected and unexpected?
The reason I've gone for the holistic approach is, during reading hundreds of books about health, most of them are a magic bullet. So if you do this one thing, that's going to change your health. You're going to lose weight. Diets are a perfect example of this. Like it's crazy people still do diets, but do this diet and you'll lose weight. Yeah, you always lose weight on a diet, but 99% of people put the weight back on. Why? Because you're starving your body. And so I truly believe if you follow the steps here, if you're overweight right now, you will lose weight, but you'll lose it permanently because it's in a sustainable, healthy way. I'm not asking you to give up, any form of food. I'm not asking you to cut your calories drastically. I actually break down in the book why diets are the biggest bullshit in the health and fitness industry. But I do it in a lot more depth. So I do truly believe that you'll lose weight permanently. If you have symptoms that are, overpowering in your life right now, the book, I basically started out as my journey on how I healed eczema. And it wasn't one thing that did it. I couldn't just give up wheat and then it was gone. No, there was other factors, and everything from, later on in the book, I talk about cosmetics. The average woman today puts 515 chemicals onto her skin a day. Mm-hmm. And it was proven way back in 1981 that anything you put on your skin is pulled into your bloodstream. So if you've got 515 synthetic chemicals going into your blood every day, and you're wondering, why am I getting headaches? Why do I have allergies? It could be the stuff that you're putting on your skin. So I take into account every single angle, and if you follow the journey just step by step, you don't have to implement everything. They're all just recommendations, but if you implement 80% of what I'm saying and 20% do whatever you want, you will see massive reduction in symptoms if you're suffering with health issues right now. And if you're not, and you're already fit, you're already healthy, this will absolutely prevent 90 to 99% of disease ever coming into your life. And as a young person, I'll say, having personal trained and consulted with hundreds, if not thousands of older people, most of them say, I wish I had your knowledge at your age, because they're learning about all of this from me, from seminars and consultations in the 60s and the 70s, and they feel that the body's already a wreck, and they wish they knew what I know when they were my age. So if you are younger, if you're in a fit and healthy body, learn about it now, read the book, implement 8% of it, and you're more than likely going to be healthy for the rest of your life.
So 2 additional questions from that. One, is there a point where it's too late for people? You also cover that. So let's say someone's in their 60s, 70s, and they want to go and read this book because there's some condition, some symptoms, and so on. Is it too late, or can you turn this around?
When it gets to a certain point, it's going to be too late. And I urge you not to get to that point. But I'd say honestly, 99% of people I've ever done a consultation with, absolutely, you can reverse what's happening and at least lessen the symptoms and any pain in your life. Mm-hmm. But the whole basically, as Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And he was actually talking there about the fire safety. People often think he's talking about medical, but it wasn't. But it applies completely to that. I believe that you can get off your high blood pressure pills, your cholesterol pills. I believe you can start to reverse the effects of diabetes by looking into holistic health. Why isn't this mainstream? Mm-hmm. There's no money in it. You know, you cannot patent something that's natural. So, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, basically, everything's synthetic in it because they can patent it, because they made it. But with synthetic comes massive amounts of side effects. And I don't think there's anyone that can deny that. But yeah, you can, if you look into the holistic thing, but you have to self-educate. This is not going to be in your news. It's not going to be in your newspapers. It's not going to be on, you know, mainstream websites because there's no money in it. But if you learn about this and you start to lead a more holistic lifestyle, you can reverse almost anything.
Perfect. And for someone that's, for example, younger, and they maybe come across your book, they come across your work, but they don't have some life-threatening illness yet. They have maybe some symptoms. Maybe they're a little overweight. They want to lose some weight. They want to have better energy because they feel tired all day long and they're drinking endless cups of coffee all day just to get through the day. But there's no big symptoms yet. What would you say to them? Why should health be a priority, especially now in the world? Like, why should it be a priority for people? And how can they kind of take the first step?
You know, health should be everyone's number one priority. Why? Because once it's gone, you know, an old proverb is a healthy man has 1,000 wishes and a sick man only has one. And, you know, I've personal trained people in Sydney, big city, busy people. You know, I had to arrive at the gym at 5:30. Everyone wanted a morning slot before work. Then they go and work like crazy, 12 hours a day. And a lot of my clients were in the mid-30s, slightly overweight, stressed. And I could, you know, one particular one came to mind where I literally said to her, you're so stressed, you're sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night, because she was in a crazy advertising industry. Said, you're killing yourself. You need to be careful. And then in the mid-30s, basically developed MS from stress, which is a life-threatening disease, you know, and debilitating. And because she didn't put her health first, yes, she was exercising. Yes, she ate good when she had the time. But the overriding thing was she put her job first, her career first. And she was award-winning. She was amazing. But putting that first in front of her health, now, you know, then she started spending all of her wealth on trying to buy her health back. Acupuncture and holistic therapies, because, you know, she started listening to me. You know, and another very enlightening quote, if you like, but basically, most people spend the first 40 or 50 years of their life trying to create wealth, you know, putting that first. But then they spend the next 40 years of their life trying to buy the health back. You know, so just if you start implementing little simple changes into your life that are neither expensive or hard to do, even if you are out there chasing your career and making money and trying to get that nice house and nice car, still put your health in there in the mix, because it can just go like that. And then that's a regret. You know, you only get one body at the end of the day.
Okay, perfect. And so people making the shift, taking responsibility for their health, making some basic changes, and then moving to more advanced changes and kind of holistically looking at their health. And that's all stuff that you cover in great detail in this 300 plus page book. Why should someone get a copy of this? Like, people are busy, despite like everything, they're busy. Will they have time? Will they, for example, there's a small investment cost to this book. Like, why should someone get this book? What would you say to someone who's maybe on the fence about either this book or any book about health or anything like that, why should someone go ahead, take that step, and get that book and consume that new information and make those changes in their life? Why is it worth it?
Well, as I said, health should be first priority. Secondly, this is stuff you will never hear about in mainstream. So if you're someone who watches TV, pretty much none of the information is going to come up on there. I always say this, why is this sort of information not on TV? Well, your mainstream news, they make money from advertising. Now, in America, especially, what's the industry with the most commercials? You got big food and big pharma. So none of the junk food people who are advertising to you want you to know that that food is killing you. And the second one is pills, medication. And they make money from people being sick. Pharmaceutical companies do not make money from you being healthy. So if the mainstream media's two sponsors don't want you to be healthy or don't want you to know that their products are going to make you unhealthy, the news is never going to report about what health truly is, because they are now basically shitting on their main sponsors, which means they'll stop the sponsorship. So nobody reports this. So if you want a different angle, put your health first and start to self-educate. In terms of my book, I truly think it's the easiest to read, easiest to implement. As I said on the front cover, no bullshit guide to health that someone can read. There might be something else out there. I've personally never read it, and I've read many, many books. I just think it just ties everything together. There's no magic bullet. I don't ask you to be perfect. I don't ask you to give up coffee or alcohol or give up bread. I talk about a holistic but a balanced approach. So it's easy to implement. My writing style is, I think when I was doing the audiobook, I did actually laugh out loud a couple of times. I know that's blowing my own on, but I enjoyed it, and hopefully you will too. So if you want something easy to read, easy to implement, and something that's not going to take over your whole life, I think that's the book.
Perfect. And so if you're here, if you're watching this interview, I hope you got great value out of this from Tom's experience. And he truly curated a little bit of his great experience and thousands of research papers and books and articles and all that stuff. Basically 19 years of research, first into health, into the physical side, becoming a certified personal trainer and so on, then going into a whole different journey and exploring this. And he's curated a little bit of that, like a drop of that into this interview here. And I've been working with him during this time, helping him edit this as well, helping prepare this we partnered up to bring you this book now. He spent so much and put so much energy into this book, and it truly is one of the best books that I've ever seen out there regarding this topic, or any topic for that matter. And I highly, highly recommend you get a copy of this book today. And thank you for watching. Go out there, implement the stuff in this interview, and start to move not just the mental side, not just your career, not just your relationships, but your health, which will help you with all those other things as well. Move that forward. Look to improve it. Look to strive to be into better physical shape, better holistically, more healthy, more energized, and so on. So look to improve those, implement this information, go out there and use this in your life.